The tea was still hot in my hand when the phone rang, shattering what should have been the calmest evening of my life. My son's name flashed across the screen. Andrew, the same man who hadn't called since I sold Langford Systems, the tech company I built from nothing over 40 years. $42 million later, I finally had what I wanted. Silence. 12 hours later, I was standing in my own lakefront living room, watching a parade of strangers drag suitcases across my walnut floors like they owned the place. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're from. Let me back up to how this beautiful disaster started. 3 months ago, I walked out of my last board meeting with a smile and a wire transfer that could buy peace itself. I bought a villa outside Savannah, 5,000 square feet of cedar and glass facing Lake Haven, the kind of place that doesn't need curtains because the view is the art. For the first time in decades, I didn't wake up to alarms or emails, just sunlight on water and the soft sound of wind through cypress trees. I'd been here exactly 8 hours when Andrew called. No, Mom, congratulations. No, the house looks beautiful. Just straight to business. Mom, we're coming down for the weekend. We? I asked. Vanessa's family, her parents, her brother, her sister's family, the kids, they need a quiet break. The guest room upstairs will be perfect for you. I actually laughed. Andrew, this is my house. They already booked flights, Mom. Don't make it weird. The casual confidence in his voice stopped me cold. The same son I put through college, whose restaurant I bailed out, twice, whose mortgage I covered when his design firm nearly collapsed, and now he was assigning me to a guest room in my own home. I set my cup down. The tea had gone cold. Andrew, I said quietly, peace never lasts long. When someone remembers your money. His tone shifted, smooth, practiced, almost surgical. The same tone his father used when he wanted to win an argument without raising his voice. Mom, you've got this enormous lake house all to yourself. It's selfish, don't you think? I could almost see him rehearsing it in the mirror. If you don't want to be reasonable about sharing it, he added, well, Vanessa mentioned a lovely assisted living community down near the highway. The word lovely stung more than the threat. For a second, I just listened to the faint hum of the lake through the window. Then I said quietly, and if I refuse? A pause. Then I guess we'll have to rethink how much help you actually need at your age. That place must be hard to manage alone. Help. Always such a polite word for control. When the call ended, I stared at my reflection in the dark glass. My tea had gone cold, just like the warmth in my chest. 3 months earlier, I'd signed away Langford Systems, the company I built from a single rented desk. 40 years, 2 patents, countless all-nighters. The buyers wired $2.4 million straight into my account. They called me visionary in the press release. Then they called me retired. That night, I opened the doors to Lake Haven Villa, cedar and glass, 6,000 square feet of quiet luxury overlooking still water. My reward, my peace, or so I thought. But as the sun slid down the horizon, painting the water in gold, I could still hear Andrew's voice echoing in my head, calm, entitled, convinced I'd surrender the way everyone expected women my age to surrender. He thought he'd cornered me. He had no idea what kind of woman he was cornering. Harold used to tell me to pick my battles carefully. I smiled toward his photograph on the shelf. Don't worry, love, I whispered. I'm just choosing the field. The next morning they'd arrive, his wife, her family, their assumptions, and I'd be ready. The lake outside shimmered like glass, flawless and deceptive, exactly the way I intended to play this game. No warning, no courtesy, just the sound of car doors slamming and voices echoing across the driveway. They didn't even pause to look toward the house, didn't wonder if they should knock first. They moved like people who'd already been told, "This place is yours now." From the upstairs landing, I watched them spill out like a moving crew. Vanessa led the charge, immaculate in white linen, her sunglasses glinting with purpose. Behind her came her parents, her brother, his girlfriend, and a small dog in a pink carrier. So it was a full army after all. I slipped on my robe and went downstairs, mostly to see how they'd handle meeting the actual owner. Vanessa startled when she saw me, just for a second, then smiled like I was a minor inconvenience. "Oh, Patricia, Andrew said you'd moved upstairs already. Perfect. Mom needs the ground floor, arthritis and all that." Her mother wheeled 2 massive suitcases straight toward my bedroom, the master suite, as if she were checking into a spa. Her father followed, humming, dragging his cooler across my oak floor. "The view's better down here anyway," Vanessa added, already gesturing for her brother to unload boxes. I stood there, barefoot on my own marble tiles, feeling like a stranger in a hotel I'd accidentally walked into. "Coffee's in the kitchen," I said evenly. "Help yourselves." "Oh, we brought our own," she chirped, pulling open my pantry doors like a store clerk on shift. "Mom's gluten-free. The kids don't like local brands. We'll just need you to clear out some fridge space." She started removing my groceries, neatly labeled, carefully arranged, and tossing them into a cardboard box. It was the kind of audacity you almost had to respect. Almost. "Where should I put these?" I asked quietly, holding up the box. "Garage fridge is fine," she said without looking up. "Andrew mentioned you had one out there." Of course he did. Apparently my son had given them a full inventory. By noon, the house was unrecognizable. Pool floats on the deck, wet towels on my antique chairs, and someone's flip-flops left soaking on the piano bench. Vanessa's mother sat at my dining table complaining about the shower pressure while her husband asked for the Wi-Fi password. "And maybe some little umbrellas for the smoothies?" he added cheerfully. I smiled, gave them the password, then excused myself to the garage, calm, deliberate, where I began making phone calls that would change everything. By the time the noise faded, the house no longer felt like mine. The laughter, the chatter, the footsteps, all gone now, leaving only echoes. But echoes tell stories. Every careless sound they'd made lingered in the air, proof of how completely they'd claimed what I'd built. I stood at the edge of the kitchen, looking at the chaos they'd left behind. Coffee dripped from the counter. Pool water tracked footprints across the floor. My silver tray, a wedding gift, was now a coaster for half-finished drinks. I could almost hear Harold's voice in my head. "Don't let emotions run the meeting, Patricia." He was right then. He'd still be right now. So I took a breath. Not deep, not slow, just controlled. And I began to think. The trick with storms isn't to fight the rain, it's to study the wind. I filled the kettle again. The whistle was steady, mechanical, comforting. Pour, measure, steep. The scent of Earl Grey rose with the steam, the same brand I'd kept in every boardroom for decades. Even war needed ritual. At my desk, I opened my laptop. It still carried the logo of my company, Langford Analytics, though it now belonged to someone else. I clicked the recording app and watched the red circle glow. "Old habits die hard," I murmured. I used to document meetings. Now, betrayals. I pulled up my recent calls. Andrew's voice filled the room again. Sharp, patronizing, too familiar. "Maybe it's too much house for you, Mom. You should let us manage things now." I'd heard the same tone from younger executives trying to edge me out of my own company. Different setting. Same condescension. I played it twice, just to memorize the rhythm. Then I saved it. Audio 01, Lake Haven incident. Peace becomes preparation. The transition was natural. After all, organization had always been my armor. I took out a small black case from the bottom drawer, a hidden camera I'd once bought for security. I remembered Andrew laughing about it at Christmas. "Paranoid much, Mom?" Now I smiled at the memory. Paranoia, it turns out, ages well. I unscrewed the base of a silver vase in the living room, positioned the lens to face the couch. The reflection from the lake shimmered through the window, catching the camera's eye. For a second, the light made it look alive, as if the house itself had started watching. Anger was noisy, I whispered. Clarity was silent. The camera blinked red once, then disappeared into stillness. I moved to the kitchen next, adjusting another device near the pantry. Vanessa loved rearranging things. Soon she'd give me all the footage I needed. She'd talk. They always talked. People who thought they'd already won never noticed the quiet ones taking notes. When everything was in place, I sat by the window again, notebook open, pen poised. Across the top of the page, I wrote in clean block letters, "The Lake Incident, Phase 1. Below it, 3 simple rules. Observe, record, don't react. Don't. The handwriting was steady, almost too steady for what I felt. Outside, the wind brushed the surface of the lake, breaking it into fragments of gold and gray. Every fragment caught a piece of sky, soft, perfect, dishonest. That lake reminded me of every man I'd ever negotiated with, calm on the surface, waiting to drown you the moment you leaned too close. I closed the notebook and tucked it under a pile of old magazines, then poured myself another cup of tea. The steam curled upward like smoke from a distant fire. The house was silent again, but not peaceful. Peace had changed shape. It had become armor, calculation, timing. I leaned against the window, watching my own reflection merge with the waters. In the glass, the faint red dot from the hidden camera blinked once. A heartbeat. A beginning. "The water looks calm," I said quietly. "So do I." But calm doesn't mean still. Still is just what the enemy sees, right before the tide turns. By the time the last trace of daylight slipped behind the lake, the house had fallen into that deceptive kind of quiet, the quiet that comes after something has already shifted. I poured what was left of my tea, intending to enjoy 5 uninterrupted minutes. Then my laptop chimed. Subject: "Looking forward to the weekend, Mom." From Andrew Langford. I smiled before even opening it. That tone, cheerful, transactional, the kind that always came before a request. The message was brief. "Can't wait for everyone to see the villa. You'll love how lively it feels." Below it, 2 attachments, guest list, XLSX, and menu.docx. Of course, I clicked the spreadsheet. 11 names, 1 tab labeled adults, another children, and even a cell for dog, grain-free chicken only. Every detail, neatly color-coded, like a corporate offsite I'd never agreed to host. Apparently, I was now an unpaid event planner with a waterfront view. I scrolled to the bottom of the list. Notes about pool access, drink preferences, room assignments. The audacity was almost professional. I closed the file and leaned back. The corners of my mouth twitched. If they wanted hospitality, I'd give them an experience they wouldn't forget. No reply, no confrontation. Silence, I'd learned, was the most eloquent answer. Instead, I opened a new browser tab. "Lake Haven Event Catering, good evening," a voice chirped. "Good evening, Diane," I said smoothly. "I'd like to schedule a premium dinner for this Saturday night. Full service, 11 guests." "Of course, ma'am. May I have a name for the order?" I paused, long enough to hear her inhale. "Mrs. Sabrina Langford." Keys clicked in the background. "Got it. Any special requests?" "Yes," I said. "Seafood, sparkling wine, dessert for 11. Charge the deposit to the card on file for that name." A beat of hesitation. Then her chipper tone returned. "Absolutely, Mrs. Langford." "That's fine," I said. "It will be." When I hung up, the air in the room felt different, lighter, charged. The moon had risen, its reflection trembling on the surface of the lake like a smirk only I could see. I opened my notes folder and typed, "Evidence Trail 01, unauthorized charges, under S. Langford. Small things build big cases." On the table, my teacup cooled beside the silver vase that hid my camera. The red light blinked once, my own quiet witness. "They weren't visiting," I said softly. "They were invading." The words felt clean, precise, already filed. I closed the laptop, let my fingers rest against the lid for a beat, and breathed out a slow laugh. "Hospitality," I murmured, "can be weaponized." Peace had its price. So did arrogance. Outside, the lake glowed pale and still, a mirror holding its breath, waiting for the first ripple of consequence. By midnight, the lake had gone black, A mirror turned to ink. Inside, my reflection hovered faintly on the glass, calm, patient, already planning. The kind of calm that comes when you've stopped reacting and started calculating. I gathered the papers from the dining table, the property deed, the sale contract, the catering confirmation, and tucked them into a neat stack. Each document felt like a chess piece sliding into position. In the study, the safe waited, a quiet gray box against the wall. I spun the dial until the latch clicked open, the sound crisp, final. Inside lay a velvet pouch, a slim envelope, and a small silver USB drive. Old habits again. I used to build companies. Now, I built insurance policies. I slid the new evidence in beside the others and locked the door with the same steady rhythm I'd once used to close mergers. On the desk, a single sheet of stationery waited. I uncapped my pen. The ink bled deep blue across the paper. Diana, if anything happens, check the cloud. Folder. Lake plan. Passwords in the place we talked about. Love, P. Diana had been my business partner before she was my friend, the only person I still trusted to read between my lines. I sealed the envelope with wax, pressed the signet ring Harold gave me, and let the seal cool. The faint scent of smoke and honey filled the air, the smell of every ending I'd ever survived. Then I turned back to the laptop. The glow from the screen lit the room in a pale blue wash. File name, lakeplan.zip. Inside, screenshots of the catering invoice, the guest list, the recorded call, and camera test footage from the silver vase. The upload bar crept upward, one thin blue line stretching toward inevitability. 40%, 60, 90, done. I checked the timestamp, renamed the archive one last time, Lake Plan 01 Draft, and dragged it into the shared drive. A quiet beep confirmed it was live. If anyone ever looked, they'd think it was a garden layout. In a way, it was. I was pruning weeds. The clock ticked toward 1. Outside, a soft wind stirred the surface of the lake, breaking the perfect reflection into fragments of light. Somewhere below, fish shifted in the dark, unseen, but moving, just like me. Revenge isn't about anger, I said softly. It's about design and timing. I closed the laptop, switched off the lamp, and stood still until my eyes adjusted to the dark. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the old clock Harold once insisted I keep. I walked to the window, the envelope still warm in my hand. Beyond the glass, the lake caught the moonlight again, smooth and unbothered. You'd never guess a storm was coming. I slipped the letter into the drawer beside the tea set, locked it, and pocketed the key. Then I smiled, small, knowing, unhurried. Inside, I gathered the scattered pages from the dining table. Deeds, receipts, contracts, and the catering invoice with Sabrina's name bold in the corner. Every paper felt like a chapter I was closing by hand. In the study, the safe waited. Cold, gray, obedient. I spun the dial, the sound crisp as a metronome. Inside lay the symbols of a life built on proof. Harold's old watch, the house deed, a stack of sealed envelopes, and one small silver USB. The weight of it all was both anchor and weapon. I slipped the new files in, aligning each folder by date. I'd spent my entire career teaching young executives that order was power. Tonight, order would be survival. On the desk, a blank sheet of stationery waited. I uncapped my pen. The ink bled slowly, steady as breath. Diana, if anything happens, check the cloud. Folder, lake plan, passwords in the place we talked about. Love, P. Her name steadied my hand. 30 years of partnership had turned our friendship into a quiet language. Sentences written between lines, instructions disguised as sentiment. I folded the letter once, pressed a seal of wax, and stamped Harold's ring into the soft red. The wax hardened, catching the faint scent of smoke and honey. It smelled like every ending I'd ever survived. Then came the digital part, the new battlefield. I opened my laptop, its glow turning the room a pale shade of blue. The folder blinked on the desktop. Lake Plan. Zip. Inside it, everything that mattered. Recordings, screenshots, receipts, and the first camera test from the silver vase. The upload bar crawled upward. 40%, 60, 90, done. A quiet chime confirmed it. A lifetime of evidence, hidden in plain sight. I renamed the file Lake Plan 01 Draft and placed a copy into a hidden partition on the USB. 2 safeties, one seen, one invisible. I'd built entire companies on redundancy. It felt almost nostalgic. The kettle clicked in the background, soft and mechanical. I poured what was left of the tea into my cup, the reflection of the monitor rippling across the surface. My own face looked back, tired, composed, unafraid. "Diana," I murmured, "if anything happens, check the cloud." Outside, the lake stirred, a faint wind brushing the water into small, perfect waves. I closed the safe, turned the key once, twice, and listened for the lock to catch. Revenge wasn't about fury or impulse. It was about engineering, structure, patience. I touched the silver handle one last time, feeling the chill of the metal settle into my palm. "Revenge isn't about anger," I whispered. "It's about design and timing." The room darkened as I shut the laptop. Morning broke clean and bright over Lake Haven, the kind of light that used to mean new beginnings. Today, it only meant noise was coming. The first sound was a low hum, then a chorus of engines grinding up the gravel drive. I set down my teacup and walked to the porch. The air smelled of cedar and calm. It didn't last. 4 black SUVs rolled into view, each one bigger, shinier, louder than the last. Doors flew open in sequence, the rhythm of an invasion rehearsed to perfection. Luggage spilled out first, expensive, excessive, unnecessary, followed by voices, laughter, orders shouted over one another. Sabrina stepped out of the lead car like she was arriving at a photo shoot. White linen dress, oversized sunglasses, a designer tote that could have paid for someone's tuition. The reflection of the lake shimmered in her lenses, so she didn't have to meet my eyes. She didn't plan to, anyway. Behind her came her parents, moving with the confidence of people who expected service. Her father clapped Andrew on the back as if he were checking into a resort. Her mother carried a bouquet of lilies, mine from the garden, and a portable blender. "For the smoothies," she said to no one. 2 more figures emerged from the second SUV. Sabrina's brother Ethan, tall, distracted, the kind of man who treated his phone like a mirror, and his girlfriend Maya, already filming the property as if she were preparing a tour for strangers. The dog barked from the back seat, a high-pitched command for attention that everyone obeyed. The whole scene unfolded like a corporate merger gone feral. Andrew caught sight of me and walked over, arms open, eyes averted. He hugged me quickly, awkwardly, his cologne sharp and unfamiliar. "Mom, hope it's okay. We'll just make ourselves comfortable." I looked past him to where Sabrina was directing her father to move those boxes closer to the pool. "Of course," I said evenly. "Comfort is what I paid for." He didn't hear the pause. He never did. From the porch, I watched them cross the threshold, suitcases rolling over the welcome mat, embroidered with peaceful days. It looked absurd now, that promise stitched in gold thread beneath their muddy shoes. Sabrina's laughter filled the foyer, bright and hollow. "Oh, it's gorgeous in here. So much light." Her voice bounced off the walls, erasing the quiet I'd spent months building. Her mother followed, humming an off-key tune as she handed me a bag of groceries I hadn't asked for. "We brought our own snacks, dear, healthier options." Andrew hovered nearby, already retreating into the safety of neutrality. "It's just for the weekend," he murmured, not quite meeting my gaze. "Of course," I said again, my tone smooth as glass. "Just the weekend." Outside, another trunk slammed shut. Inside, drawers opened, laughter spilled, feet thudded on the stairs. I could hear Sabrina giving instructions like a CEO rearranging her department. "Let's move the armchairs toward the window. Better for the view." I stayed where I was, hands folded loosely, watching. Observation was a language I spoke fluently. Every gesture, every careless word was data. Through the open door, sunlight caught the silver vase in the corner. The camera lens blinked once, then went still. Her father wandered in with a cooler of drinks. "Mind if we put this by the wine fridge?" he asked, already halfway there. I smiled. "Be my guest." The irony floated right past him. By the time the last SUV door shut, the air had changed. The quiet house now throbbed with overlapping voices, footsteps, and the faint beat of music from someone's phone. Even the lake outside seemed unsettled, rippling under the weight of their noise. I leaned against the doorframe, letting the chaos play out like a dress rehearsal. In 40 years of leadership, I'd learned that power wasn't about volume. It was about patience. Inside, Sabrina's reflection flashed across the hallway mirror. Sharp, confident, certain she'd already won. Every room carried new echoes, different footsteps, different priorities. From the hallway, I could see Sabrina standing in the center of the living room, one manicured finger pressed to her chin like an interior designer assessing a client's mistake. "We'll move this sofa closer to the window," she announced. "Better for the view." Andrew nodded immediately, too eager to agree. Her brother followed her orders without question, dragging one end of the couch across the floor while her father lifted the other, both of them grunting like movers on commission. The legs scraped against the wood, the sound sharp enough to make me flinch. I said nothing. Watching was safer. Listening was smarter. The room filled with the dull rhythm of furniture scraping and voices overlapping. No, rotate it! Yes, like that!" Sabrina called, snapping her fingers toward the corner. Her mother adjusted a lamp. Her brother rearranged the pillows. Her father commented on the glare from the glass wall, as if he'd spent years living there. Every piece they touched lost its memory of where it used to belong. Andrew laughed nervously, wiping his forehead. "See, Mom? Doesn't that feel more open?" I smiled faintly. "It certainly feels different." He didn't catch the pause. He never did. Sabrina pulled open the curtains with a flourish, sunlight spilling into the room. "Now it feels alive," she declared. The white drapes billowed, and the reflection of the lake trembled across the floor, breaking into uneven light. While they admired their own handiwork, I walked to the far wall where the camera cable trailed beneath the molding. My fingers moved slowly, steady despite the noise. I slipped the wire from behind the vase and guided it toward a new outlet, one with a clearer view of the entire room. They thought I was just fixing something small. No one asked. No one looked twice. They rearranged furniture like they rearranged respect, I thought, casually. Sabrina stood back, hands on her hips. "Perfect," she said. "Now it feels more welcoming." Her father nodded in approval. Her mother took a photo for inspiration. Andrew looked relieved that his wife was pleased. I looked around at what used to be my living room. The sofa no longer faced the fireplace. The chairs were uneven. The rug had been pushed halfway under the cabinet. The symmetry I'd built over months was gone in minutes. The house looked younger, louder, more careless, like them. Still, the camera caught every detail. Their laughter, the way Andrew deferred to her, the small expression of victory that flickered across Sabrina's face when she stepped back to admire her rearranged kingdom. When they left for the patio, I stood alone in the newly designed chaos. Dust floated through the beam of sunlight, drifting like unsettled thoughts. I bent to adjust one last cable, the smallest movement of all, then stood upright, smoothing my shirt. The lake beyond the glass shimmered in fractured light, gold, white, silver, like it was holding its breath. "They rearranged furniture like they rearranged respect," I murmured, "and neither would ever go back where it belonged." By evening, the smell of roasted meat and wine drifted through the hallway. I followed it to the kitchen, more out of curiosity than hunger. The dining room glowed under the warm light of the chandelier, every seat taken, every plate filled. Sabrina sat at the head of the table, her laughter rising above the rest. She had arranged the chairs so naturally that no one noticed I was standing at the doorway, watching my own house host a dinner I hadn't been invited to. Andrew poured wine into her glass, leaning in to whisper something that made her smile. His plate was full. His eyes never looked for me. Sabrina noticed me then, halfway through her story about some renovation she planned for our summer place. Her fork froze for just a second before she smiled brightly, as if remembering her manners. "Oh, we didn't think you'd be up, Patricia," she said sweetly. "Would you like some salad?" I let the silence stretch, just long enough for the question to wilt between us. Then I smiled. "No, dear," I said softly. "I had something far better." Her expression flickered, confused, polite, curious. But she didn't ask. She just turned back to her guests. The conversation swelled again, louder this time, as though they needed to fill the space I'd left untouched. I walked out to the porch, the air cool against my skin. The silver teapot gleamed on the small table beside the rocking chair. I poured a cup, the steam rising slow and steady. Inside, laughter broke against the walls like waves. Out here, the night was still. The moon hung low over the lake, scattering light across the water in trembling pieces. From this angle, I could see their reflections through the glass wall, bright, busy, overlapping, each one smaller than the real thing. The camera on the porch blinked once, catching the frame exactly as I'd planned. A perfect portrait of hospitality turned hollow. I sipped my tea, the flavor clean and sharp, untouched by their noise. They toasted something I couldn't hear. A joke followed, then another. Even Andrew's voice rose in laughter. For a moment, I could almost mistake it for happiness. Almost. Inside, Sabrina leaned back in my chair, her white dress gleaming under the chandelier. Every gesture was ownership. Of the house, the evening, even the narrative. She reached for the bottle again, her bracelet flashing under the light. It reminded me of handcuffs made of gold. I set my cup down carefully. The saucer clicked against the table, precise and final. Solitude, I realized, has its own taste. Bitter at first, then strangely pure. "Solitude," I whispered, "tastes cleaner than pity." The breeze carried the words out across the lake, where they vanished into the dark. Inside, Sabrina's laughter rose again, too bright, too practiced. But beyond the glass, the reflection of the dining table wavered, each ripple blurring their faces, softening their certainty. They couldn't see me from where I sat. They didn't need to. I was exactly where I belonged, outside their noise, inside my design. The house had gone quiet, but not asleep. Somewhere down the hall, a faucet dripped in rhythm with the ticking clock. I sat in the reading room, the glow of my laptop casting soft blue across the desk. The silver teapot from earlier still sat nearby, half full, the surface of the tea unbroken. On the screen, the camera feeds lined up neatly. Living room, hallway, kitchen. A small grid of truths waiting to be seen. I clicked the kitchen view. Sabrina and her mother stood by the counter, half-shadowed under the pendant lights. 2 glasses of red wine between them. Their laughter was softer now, the kind that always came before secrets. Sabrina swirled her glass, her tone low and confident. "If Andrew convinces her to add my name to the deed, this house could be ours legally." Her mother didn't even hesitate. "You're smart, honey. Old people love feeling useful." They both laughed, the kind of laughter that sharpens instead of softens. I leaned closer to the screen. The camera picked up every detail, the glint of her ring, the lazy tilt of her head, the casual cruelty of certainty. Sabrina's voice turned thoughtful. "He just needs to bring it up at the right time. Maybe frame it as an estate thing, make it sound responsible." Her mother nodded. "Exactly. You're helping her, not taking from her." The lie was polished smooth, rehearsed to perfection. I reached for the mouse and clicked record. The red icon glowed in the corner of the screen. The feed hummed quietly, the house itself now listening. Outside, a breeze brushed the windows, carrying the faint scent of lake water. Inside, my kitchen had become their war room. Sabrina poured more wine, her bracelet catching the light. Once the paperwork's in motion, she won't even notice. These things take time. She'll think it's just housekeeping. Her mother smiled. And if she resists? She won't. Andrew said she's soft. She'll come around. I could feel my pulse slow, not quicken. Years of boardrooms had trained me for this. When people underestimate you, let them. They'll show you where the walls are weakest. I sat back, eyes steady on the screen. The cursor blinked against the digital record of their voices. 2 lines of evidence building quietly in the dark. They plotted in my kitchen, I whispered, using my Wi-Fi, over wine I bought. The irony was exquisite. I checked the timestamp, 22:12 p.m., and saved the file under a new name, Audio 02, Kitchen Strategy. Then I looked up at the ceiling where the light fixture swayed slightly from the air vent. The reflection of the pendant shimmered on the polished table surface, a small circle of gold trembling in silence. Control didn't always feel dramatic. Sometimes it sounded like a mouse click. I stopped the recording, backed up the file, and slid the USB drive into its port. The small red light blinked twice, then stilled. Outside, the lake lay dark, mirror flat, pretending to rest. But even mirrors remember what they've seen. I closed the laptop, the faint hum fading into quiet. The wine in the kitchen was nearly gone. The plan in their heads was nearly written. Dawn broke pale and deliberate, the kind of quiet morning that invites strategy. I was in the kitchen before anyone else, the light still soft against the steel appliances. The house smelled of coffee and lake air, clean, organized, mine again for a few precious minutes. On the counter lay a blank notepad, my Mont Blanc pen beside it. The same pen I'd used to sign contracts, settle disputes, end wars politely. I began to write. House rules. Breakfast ends at 8. Please clean after use. No shoes beyond the main hall. Respect shared spaces. Quiet hours after 9. Simple, neutral, unarguable. I tore the sheet neatly and taped it to the refrigerator door, smoothing the edges flat against the cold steel. The reflection in the surface showed my hand steady, the gesture almost gentle. Control, I reminded myself, doesn't have to raise its voice. It can whisper through boundaries. By the time I set out the plates, I heard footsteps upstairs, heels first, then laughter. Sabrina entered the kitchen wearing silk pajamas and sunglasses, carrying her phone like a scepter. She stopped when she saw the note. Her smile thinned. "What's this?" "House rules," I said evenly, pouring orange juice into a glass, "just to help keep things organized." She read the lines aloud, one eyebrow rising higher with each sentence. "Breakfast ends at 8? Are we on a schedule?" I handed her a plate. "It keeps the mornings peaceful." She laughed, but it came out brittle. "We're on vacation, Patricia, not at a retreat." I smiled back, slow and polite. "Exactly. Vacations are earned." Andrew appeared then, hair still damp, eyes flicking nervously between us. "Mom, maybe we don't need rules. Everyone's just settling in," I finished for him. "Yes, I noticed." The pause that followed was soft but heavy. Sabrina placed her phone on the counter with more force than necessary. "I just think freedom is part of relaxation." I folded a napkin and set it beside her plate. "So is respect." She didn't reply. She poured herself coffee, her movements suddenly precise, mechanical. Behind her, the sunlight hit the refrigerator, and the paper shone like a quiet decree. Andrew shifted awkwardly. "You've always been a little organized, Mom." "Habit," I said. "Structure builds calm. Chaos builds noise." Sabrina gave a small, humorless laugh. "You really can't turn it off, can you? CEO forever." I stirred my tea, the spoon tapping gently against porcelain. "Experience has its uses." She took a sip of her coffee, watching me over the rim of her cup. I could feel her mind working, weighing how much of this was harmless and how much was challenge. That uncertainty was my first victory. When they left the kitchen, I began clearing the table, slowly, methodically, each plate back to its place, each crumb brushed away. The morning light caught on the stainless steel, scattering into small reflections across the tiles. I glanced at the note again. Simple words, small rules. But already they were shifting the air in the house. Boundaries define who listens and who breaks them. Either way, they reveal character. From the window, the lake shimmered under the early sun, bright and glassy, pretending peace. I pressed the refrigerator door closed, felt the magnetic seal catch, and smiled to myself. Sometimes, I whispered, control sounds like courtesy. I sat at my desk with a fresh cup of tea, ready to check the cloud folder. The cursor blinked, the page loaded halfway, then froze. Incorrect password. I tried again. Same message. A small inconvenience, nothing more on the surface, but small things often carry larger meanings. I checked the Wi-Fi icon. Disconnected. I reopened the settings. A new network name blinked at the top of the list. Sabrina Home 5G. I smiled without smiling. It wasn't the Wi-Fi they changed. It was respect, again. Somewhere in the house, a laugh echoed from upstairs. Hers. The kind of laugh that always followed a win, even a petty one. Andrew's voice joined a moment later, low, uncertain, trying to sound calm. She won't even notice, babe. I noticed. I always noticed. The clock on the wall ticked like a reminder that patience was still my sharpest tool. I opened the camera dashboard instead. The interface loaded instantly. They hadn't thought to change that password, too. The feed came alive. Hallway, kitchen, study. A timeline of moments I hadn't needed to see, but had saved anyway. In the log panel, a list of devices scrolled across the screen. Andrew MacBook, Guest TV, Sabrina iPhone. I clicked the last one. The metadata appeared. Connection time, IP trace, network rename. I smiled, I said softly. Tech never lies. For years, I'd built systems to catch human error disguised as confidence. This was no different. I inserted the silver USB into the laptop, the small click precise as punctuation. The screen flickered once, then started copying files, camera footage, audio recordings, network logs, timestamps. The sound of the drive spinning filled the silence like a heartbeat. Outside, the lake rippled under the wind. The sky deepened into blue glass, still beautiful, still deceptive. I opened a new email draft to Diana. The subject line read, Update, Lake Plan Phase 2. In the body, I wrote only a single sentence. They just pressed send without knowing it. I attached nothing. I never did until it mattered. The draft would stay unsent, hidden in plain sight, time-stamped and retrievable. From the hallway, I could hear Sabrina complaining about the kettle. Too slow, too old, too something. Every word was data. Every sound another proof of possession. I looked at the router lights flickering across the room, green, steady, oblivious. The new password didn't matter. They could own the airwaves for now. What I owned was the record. I leaned back, the glow from the screen painting my face in pale silver. Somewhere beyond the window, the water moved, carrying the last light of day. Respect, I thought, was a fragile signal, easy to lose, easy to trace. I ejected the USB, labeled it with calm handwriting. Network Incident 01. Then I stood, stretched, and opened the window. The evening breeze swept through, carrying the scent of cypress and cold metal. Control doesn't shout. It waits for confirmation. The wind brushed the curtains, the papers on my desk fluttered once, and the lake outside shimmered like a mirror ready to expose its reflection. Night settled like ink over Lake Haven. The house was quiet again, but the kind of quiet that hummed with unfinished work. I set my teacup beside the laptop, the faint scent of bergamot rising with the steam. The silver USB waited on the desk, small and precise, like a key. I plugged it in. The screen came alive, blue light spreading across the room in thin reflections that reached the window. Outside, the lake mirrored that same blue, still, endless, unreadable. I clicked connect. Diana's face appeared on the screen, dimly lit by her own desk lamp. She looked exactly as she had 20 years ago in the late-night audit rooms. Sharp eyes, calm voice, no small talk. "It's been a while," she said quietly. "Not long enough for me to forget how to use our toys," I replied. Her brow arched. "You sound like you're back in a boardroom." "In a way, I am, just smaller, meaner, personal." She nodded once. "What's happening there?" I turned the camera slightly toward the monitor, showing her the files. Folders lined in order: Audio 01, Kitchen Log, Network Incident 01. "Remember that audit software we built in 2015? I asked. Her eyes narrowed. "The one we used to trace shell accounts and falsified transfers? That's the one." I smiled faintly. "You're thinking of using it?" she said. "Not thinking," I answered. "Already did." I dragged the log files into the old system window. Lines of green code began to scroll down the screen. Timestamps, device IDs, data packets from the Wi-Fi logs. The algorithm recognized patterns automatically, grouping connections, labeling anomalies. On the other end, Diana adjusted her glasses. "You still have it running on your local?" "Updated it myself last winter. Habit dies hard." The software pinged, a low, deliberate tone. "Unauthorized network modification detected." Diana leaned closer. "You've got your proof." I nodded. "The device name alone is enough. Sabrina iPhone." She renamed the router, changed the admin access, rerouted signal, all within the last 24 hours. "She's sloppy," Diana said. "And you're recording all of this." "Every byte," I replied. "Old tools, new purpose." Diana exhaled, a sound halfway between worry and admiration. "You're not planning to just document this, are you?" "Documentation is just the first phase," I said. "We built that software to catch frauds. Let's catch one more." She smiled for the first time, that same quiet, knowing curve of the mouth that used to appear right before a corporate takedown. "You always did like poetic symmetry." "Justice deserves symmetry," I said simply. We watched the progress bar climb across the screen, green to gold, steady as breath. When it reached 100%, the soft chime of completion echoed through the speakers, an oddly satisfying sound. "Upload complete," the screen confirmed. Diana sat back. "I'll run cross-verification on my end. Same encryption as before?" "Layered twice. You'll get a backup within the hour," I said. "Folder name, Lake Plan, Na02. Password same as the first." Her gaze softened. "You've already thought 3 steps ahead, haven't you?" "Always." I closed the folder, the reflection of the lake flickering across my screen like moving glass. Boundaries, once broken, have to be rebuilt, brick by brick, bite by bite. "Be careful, Patricia," she said. "You know how fast arrogance unravels." "I'm counting on it," I replied. The call ended with a faint echo. I stared at the empty screen for a moment, listening to the laptop fan hum. Outside, the lake breathed against the shore, small ripples catching the light from my window. Every reflection looked like a blueprint. Clean lines, measured angles, waiting for construction. Morning light hit the glass of my desk, turning every fingerprint into silver. The house was still, the kind of silence that hums after conflict. I opened my laptop and signed into the villa's management account, the same one I'd used to pay the contractors and groundskeepers. The balance blinked on the screen, solid and waiting. I clicked Create New Sub-Account. Name, Lake Haven Maintenance Fund. Deposit, $5,000. The cursor pulsed beneath the confirmation box. I paused for a moment, watching my reflection in the monitor, the calm face of someone setting a stage. A door doesn't need to be forced open, just left unlocked. The transaction went through with a quiet chime. I arranged the digital folders neatly, attaching a few harmless invoices: plumbing, window cleaning, garden upkeep. The bait had to look ordinary. Outside, a soft ripple moved across the lake, the kind that forms when something invisible brushes beneath the surface. Footsteps approached behind me. Andrew's voice came lightly, almost casual. "Mom, can I ask you something?" I didn't turn around. "You just did." He gave a nervous laugh. Sabrina mentioned setting up automatic payments, for convenience. Maybe we could link her card to this account just so we can help with expenses. I scrolled down the screen slowly, letting him hear the faint rhythm of the mouse clicks. Help, I repeated, as if tasting the word. He stepped closer. It'll just make things smoother. No confusion later. I looked over my shoulder, meeting his uncertain smile. The boy who once needed help with his taxes now stood suggesting how to manage my finances. His tone was too even, too rehearsed. Of course, I said at last. Convenience always comes first. He exhaled, relieved, already halfway out of the room. Thanks, Mom. I'll tell her. Do, I replied softly. When the door closed, I stared at the screen again. The small green light on the camera blinked once, then steadied. The file name shimmered across the top. Lake Haven Maintenance Fund. $5,000, a single thread in a very long web. I knew Sabrina wouldn't be able to resist tidying what she thought was poorly managed. She'd want to optimize it, take charge, prove efficiency. Greed rarely looks like theft in its first draft. I opened a hidden folder labeled Audit Trail, mirrored the account log, and attached a tracker script Diana had written years ago. Every edit, every withdrawal, every login would now leave its own time-stamped echo. The lake reflected through the window beside me, blue light rippling across the steel edges of the laptop. I took a slow sip of tea and pressed save. I left the key, I whispered, and waited. Pull. Outside, the breeze moved across the water, scattering the reflection of the house into 1,000 fragments, each one small, bright, and temporary. The morning began with sunlight cutting across the kitchen tiles, sharp and clean. The air smelled of cinnamon and roasted beans, and for a moment, peace almost felt possible again. Almost. Sabrina stood by the counter, laughing too loudly at something Andrew had said, her white blouse crisp, her movements deliberate. I was seated at the table, notebook open beside my cup, notes that looked like simple grocery lists but weren't. She turned toward me with that polished sweetness that never reached her eyes. You still writing everything down, Patricia? Old habit, I said, smiling. Some things are easier to remember when they're on paper. She lifted the coffee pot from the counter, poured herself a refill, then began walking toward the table. Her heels clicked in perfect rhythm, until they didn't. A sudden stumble. A gasp. Oh dear, I'm so clumsy, she cried, the words spilling out just as smoothly as the coffee that splashed across the notebook and table. The smell hit first. Burnt. Bitter. Then the spreading stain, dark and wide, bleeding through the pages like smoke through silk. Andrew rushed in, grabbing napkins. Mom, it's just a notebook, he said quickly, his voice a plea for calm. It's not a big deal. I looked at him, then at her. Her hand hovered over the mess, pretending to help, her expression all innocence. It's fine, I said softly, reaching for a towel. It's already recorded elsewhere. She froze for half a second, just enough for her smile to falter. Then she straightened, brushing invisible dust from her sleeve. Still, I'm terribly sorry. I'm sure you are, I said. Andrew tried again, awkward and gentle. She didn't mean— I know, I interrupted. Accidents happen. But my tone was too calm for comfort, and the silence that followed stretched thin and heavy. I blotted the pages slowly, watching the ink blur into patterns. Then I turned the ruined notebook toward her. See? Nothing lost. Inside, every page was blank. The cameras would tell the rest of the story, the deliberate tilt of her wrist, the too perfect angle of the spill. The vase lens caught it all. I gathered the damp paper, folded it neatly, and set it aside. The table was spotless again within minutes. Some stains wash off, I murmured, wiping the last trace from the wood. Others get documented. Sabrina glanced at me, uncertain now, then excused herself to check on the kids. Andrew lingered by the doorway, torn between apology and denial. He said nothing. He didn't need to. The sunlight moved across the table, landing on the silver spoon beside my cup. I watched the reflection shimmer, precise and cold. By afternoon, the house had gone quiet again. Too quiet for the number of people it held. That kind of silence always meant something was happening elsewhere. I preferred when it happened here, under my control. In the study, the curtains were half drawn, soft light spilling across the desk. My laptop hummed to life. One by one, the files began to transfer from the camera feed. Video 02, kitchen, video 03, hallway, audio 01, guest room. Each progress bar inched forward with the patience of someone who'd waited her whole life to be underestimated. I opened the external drive, its surface cold beneath my hand, brushed smooth like a stone from the lake. I named the main folder, Lake Evidence, then began tagging each file, precise and deliberate. Justice, I murmured, like wine, needs time and proper labeling. The screen glowed faint blue, reflecting against the polished wood and the half-filled teacup beside me. I paused only to stretch my fingers, then continued. Date, time, location. Nothing out of order, not a single bite misplaced. The kettle clicked in the background, water done boiling. I didn't get up. Through the walls, faint laughter echoed from the patio. Sabrina's family, still confident, still loud. I let the sound pass through me, leaving no trace. When the last file finished, I plugged in a second drive and copied everything again. One cloud, one physical, one hidden, always three, always redundancy. I'd built systems long before I built this villa, and systems, unlike people, never betrayed you when the rules were clear. The phone buzzed beside the monitor. Diana's name appeared on the screen. I answered without looking away from the data. "You've been busy," she said. "I just got your encrypted upload." "Habit," I replied. "I like my piece backed up." She laughed softly. "You're building a case, aren't you?" I smiled. "No, I'm building peace, brick by brick." There was a pause on the line, then a sound like approval. "You always did have the neatest blueprints." "Order keeps the mind clear," I said. "Until the storm," she added. "Especially then." We said nothing more. The call ended with a click that felt like punctuation. Final. Clean. I leaned back, watching the folder tree on my screen expand neatly into rows of proof. Each title was simple, precise, unthreatening. The kind of order that could ruin someone's world. On the corner of the desk, the drive light blinked. Steady, rhythmic, alive. I touched the surface once, the hum beneath it faint and steady, like a heartbeat I could trust. By sunset, the patio glowed with lanterns strung between the cypress trees. Laughter floated across the lake like ripples of perfume and wine. Someone had brought speakers. Soft jazz mingled with the sound of glasses touching, and the faint hum of mosquitoes over the water. I sat at the far end of the table, the hostess of a party I hadn't planned. Sabrina moved from guest to guest with her usual choreography, refilling glasses, adjusting candles, performing generosity like a well-rehearsed dance. Her mother beamed beside her, pleased with the scene. I let them have the spotlight. It's easier to study people when they think you've stepped out of the frame. From where I sat, I could see the lake, gold on the surface, black underneath. The same duality lived in every person here. Andrew leaned across the table, whispering something to Sabrina that made her laugh. She turned to her friends, wine glass in hand, her voice bright and careless. "You know, Mom's been a little forgetful lately," she said, eyes flicking toward me. "We worry sometimes." A ripple of polite laughter followed. Not cruel, just ignorant. The kind that cuts deepest because it pretends not to. Andrew looked down at his plate, pretending not to hear. His silence was its own confession. I set my glass down carefully, letting the stem touch the wood without a sound. Then I smiled, small, measured, enough to make the room pause. "That's why I record everything," I said evenly. "Memory is fragile, is..." The laughter died the way a flame dies when it runs out of air. Someone coughed. Someone else reached for their drink. Sabrina blinked, still smiling but slower now, her balance tipping somewhere between guilt and confusion. The lake breeze carried her perfume toward me, sweet, synthetic, the kind that fades fast. I lifted my glass again, nodding lightly as if to toast. To fragile things, I added. No one clinked their glasses this time. Across the patio, a small red light blinked inside the potted hydrangeas. The camera hidden there had caught every word. Her tone, the laughter, the faces that looked away. I turned my gaze toward the lake, where the reflection of the string lights wavered on the surface. They laughed, I thought. I labeled the file. The night went on as if nothing had shifted, but I could feel the air changing, thicker, heavier, aware. Sabrina filled her glass again, pretending the moment had passed. Andrew tried to make small talk about the weather. I let him. It was easier that way. When the last guest left and the lanterns began to dim, I gathered the empty glasses into a neat line, one by one. Each left a ring on the table, temporary, faint, easy to wipe away. The kind of mark that disappears on the surface but lingers where the wood has already absorbed it. Night settled softly over the lake. The last echo of laughter from the party had vanished, leaving only the hum of the crickets and the quiet pulse of the villa's lights. From the study window, the water looked like glass, still, perfect, deceptive. I sat at the desk, the lamp casting its circle of amber light across the open laptop. The rest of the room stayed in shadow, just the way I liked it. Silence had its own kind of authority when you learned to use it well. On the screen, dozens of files lined up neatly. Videos, audio logs, digital timestamps, each one marked, named, and cross-referenced. No drama, no noise, just order. They taught me chaos, I whispered to myself. I repaid them in order. My fingers moved with slow precision, opening the email window. The cursor blinked patiently. To Diana Cook. Subject line, Lake Evidence. Part 1. I hesitated for a moment. Not out of doubt, but ritual. Every major decision I'd ever made began with a breath of stillness, a single pause before action. Outside, the lake absorbed the moonlight, folding it into itself. It looked almost kind tonight, merciful even. I began attaching files one by one. Audio 01, guest room. Video 02, kitchen. Clip 03, patio. The progress bar crept upward, soft blue against the dark screen. I reached for my cup of tea. The steam had long faded, leaving only the faint metallic scent of silver leaves and memory. The kind that doesn't comfort. It reminds. They think revenge is noise, I thought, watching the cursor blink again. But real revenge is quiet. It's structure. It's remembering correctly. A draft of wind slipped through the open window, brushing the papers on my desk. The edges lifted and settled again, as if the house itself exhaled. When the upload finished, I reread the message once more. Diana, backup attached. If anything happens, you know where to look. P. No drama, no accusation, only data. The lake shimmered outside, a perfect mirror of the villa's golden light. I could see my own reflection faintly in the glass, older, sharper, steady. Revenge isn't fury, I said under my breath. It's memory, written carefully. I moved the cursor toward the small blue button. My finger hovered for a second, then pressed send. A soft whoosh followed, barely audible, just a sound in the night. But it traveled farther than anyone here would ever guess. The screen confirmed. Message sent. I closed the laptop gently, as if sealing a letter, and leaned back. Outside, the lake rippled once, then went still again. The reflection of the villa steadied, the lights unwavering. The phone buzzed once, sharp against the stillness. I glanced at the screen. Diana Cook. When I answered, her voice came through steady but low. That maintenance account you created? The one labeled Lake Haven Fund? Yes, I said. What about it? She moved money, $4,200, straight to her personal card. It's logged on the system. For a moment, the only sound was the faint tick of the clock and the soft whir of my laptop. I reached for the mouse, opened the account file, and watched the page load. There it was. Transaction ID, #LAH4217. Date, time, device name, Sabrina, iPhone. My hand trembled slightly. Not from fear, but from memory. I'd seen betrayals before, but never from this close to home. 20 years of trust, reduced to one click, one digital signature. The reflection from the desk lamp glimmered across my glasses, turning the numbers gold. I took a sip from my cold tea, its surface trembling slightly as I set it down. She didn't even hide it, Diana continued. Used the same card linked to her personal shopping account. I exhaled slowly. Greed doesn't hide, Diana. It poses. She gave a short laugh, the kind that sounds like disbelief. So what now? Now, I said, dragging the cursor over the transaction, we flag it. A soft chime confirmed the action. Flagged for fraud. Lake Haven Fund. I added a note beneath. Unauthorized transfer. Device ID logged. The lake outside mirrored the lamplight, silver against black. Every small ripple looked like handwriting, my handwriting, marking the surface of truth. You don't need to chase liars, I said quietly. Just let their steps echo. On the screen, the data folded into place, time-stamped and secure. Diana was silent for a while, then murmured, "She's unraveling, Pat." I looked out toward the lake, where the wind had started to stir the reflection. "No," I said softly. "She's just pulling her own thread." The call ended. The room returned to silence. In the corner of the desk, the drive light blinked. Once, twice, steady. I leaned back, eyes half closed, and let the quiet do what it did best. Speak louder than any accusation. Outside, the surface of the lake shifted again, scattering light into 1,000 fragments. Each fragment carried a truth, patient, sharp, and waiting. Morning light spilled through the villa's tall windows, clean and pale. The air smelled faintly of coffee and lake wind. A black sedan stopped in the driveway, its tires crunching over gravel. When the doorbell rang, Sabrina was already in the hallway, hair perfect, voice bright. "I'll get it," she called. Mr. Holt stood on the porch, a tall man in a gray suit, holding a leather folder stamped with the bank's insignia. "Routine audit, Mrs. Langford," he said, offering a polite nod. Before I could answer, Sabrina stepped forward. "Oh, you can talk to me. Mom's not great with numbers lately. I handle those details." I smiled faintly. "Then you won't mind transparency." Her face tightened just slightly. We led him to the living room. The morning sun caught the surface of the lake outside, throwing faint waves of light across the glass doors. I set my teacup aside and opened my laptop. "Here's the full record," I said, scrolling through the statement. The red-flagged entry gleamed on the screen like a wound. "Forwarded automatically by system admin, Diana Cook." Mr. Holt adjusted his glasses, leaned closer, and frowned. "This transfer wasn't approved. That's concerning." Sabrina shifted beside him, her practiced charm faltering. "It must be a mix-up," she said quickly. "Andrew probably—" Mr. Holt raised a hand. "It's time-stamped, Mrs. Langford. Device ID matches your phone." For a moment, the only sound was the faint clink of her bracelet as she pulled her hands together. I sat back, calm, the sunlight touching the rim of my cup. "Truth," I said quietly, "has its own clock." Mr. Holt closed his folder with care. "We'll begin a review process immediately," he said. "Expect follow-up from the compliance department." Sabrina forced a smile that never reached her eyes. "Of course. Anything to clear it up." When the door closed behind him, I turned toward the window. The lake outside shimmered again, bright and merciless. The room was dim, except for the lamp that burned low over the desk. The lake outside was a sheet of black glass, catching only the faintest trace of moonlight. Andrew stood near the window, hands in his pockets, his reflection trapped beside mine. He had come to talk, he said, about misunderstandings, about how things were getting tense. His tone was polite, rehearsed, the same tone he used when explaining away his wife's behavior. I said nothing. I only opened the laptop. "Before we talk," I said quietly, "let's listen." The screen glowed pale blue. I clicked play. Sabrina's voice filled the room, bright, sharp, casual. "Mom's forgetful sometimes. We worry, you know." Then laughter, the clink of glasses, the kind of cruelty that hides under charm. Andrew froze. His reflection blurred against the window pane. "She said that?" His voice cracked between disbelief and shame. "She recorded herself perfectly," I said. The words hung there, simple, final. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. He rubbed his temple, muttering something about context, about jokes taken too far. But the file didn't care for excuses. The truth had already spoken. I paused the recording. The silence that followed was heavier than sound. "They wanted to rewrite me," I said softly, turning the laptop toward him. I kept the drafts. He looked down, unable to meet my eyes. Outside, the wind moved across the lake, breaking its reflection into shards. I closed the laptop slowly. The click of the hinge sounded like a verdict. Some truths don't need to be shouted. They just need to be replayed. Segment 22. The Confrontation by the Lake. The next evening, the air was thick with heat, the kind that presses against your skin, waiting for something to break. Sabrina found me on the path by the lake, her heels stabbing the gravel. The sun had just begun to set, staining the water in bruised orange and silver. "You trapped me," she shouted. "All those cameras, those files, you planned this." I kept walking toward the dock, slow and deliberate. The wood beneath my feet creaked softly, keeping rhythm with her anger. "No," I said. "You stepped into open doors." She stopped short, eyes blazing. "You think this makes you righteous? You're pathetic, snooping, spying, hiding behind your gadgets." Her voice echoed over the water, startling the birds from the reeds. I turned to face her. "I didn't need to hide," I said evenly. "You performed in front of every lens." The wind carried her perfume toward me, sharp, artificial, like something trying too hard to be beautiful. Her hands trembled. "Andrew doesn't believe you," she hissed. "He knows what you're doing." Behind her, a figure stood at the edge of the path. Andrew, silent, watching. I reached into my pocket and drew out the small silver USB. The last piece, the final thread. The sun caught it, and for a brief moment, the metal flared gold, like a spark on the surface of the lake. "This," I said quietly, "contains your words, your transfers, your laughter." Sabrina took a half step back. Her voice cracked. "You wouldn't—" "Justice doesn't argue," I said. "It plays evidence." The wind rose then, moving across the water, scattering the reflection of the villa's lights into trembling streaks. Andrew's eyes followed the USB as I placed it in his hand. No speeches, no accusations, just proof. Sabrina looked between us, her face drained of color. The sound of the water lapped softly against the dock, the only applause this moment would get. The room was dim, except for the lamp that burned low over the desk. The lake outside was a sheet of black glass, catching only the faintest trace of moonlight. Andrew stood near the window, hands in his pockets, his reflection trapped beside mine. He had come to talk, he said, about misunderstandings, about how things were getting tense. His tone was polite, rehearsed, the same tone he used when explaining away his wife's behavior. I said nothing. I only opened the laptop. "Before we talk," I said quietly, "let's listen." The screen glowed pale blue. I clicked play. Sabrina's voice filled the room, bright, sharp, casual. "Mom's forgetful sometimes. We worry, you know." Then laughter. The clink of glasses, the kind of cruelty that hides under charm. Andrew froze. His reflection blurred against the window pane. "She said that?" His voice cracked between disbelief and shame. "She recorded herself perfectly," I said. The words hung there, simple, final. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. He rubbed his temple, muttering something about context, about jokes taken too far. But the file didn't care for excuses. The truth had already spoken. I paused the recording. The silence that followed was heavier than sound. "They wanted to rewrite me," I said softly, turning the laptop toward him. "I kept the drafts." He looked down, unable to meet my eyes. Outside, the wind moved across the lake, breaking its reflection into shards. I closed the laptop slowly. The click of the hinge sounded like a verdict. Some truths don't need to be shouted. They just need to be replayed. The next evening, the air was thick with heat, the kind that presses against your skin, waiting for something to break. Sabrina found me on the path by the lake, her heels stabbing the gravel. The sun had just begun to set, staining the water in bruised orange and silver. "You trapped me," she shouted. "All those cameras, those files, you planned this." I kept walking toward the dock, slow and deliberate. The wood beneath my feet creaked softly, keeping rhythm with her anger. "No," I said. "You stepped into open doors." She stopped short, eyes blazing. "You think this makes you righteous? You're pathetic, snooping, spying, hiding behind your gadgets." Her voice echoed over the water, startling the birds from the reeds. I turned to face her. "I didn't need to hide," I said evenly. "You performed in front of every lens." The wind carried her perfume toward me, sharp, artificial, like something trying too hard to be beautiful. Her hands trembled. "Andrew doesn't believe you," she hissed. "He knows what you're doing." Behind her, a figure stood at the edge of the path. Andrew, silent, watching. I reached into my pocket and drew out the small silver USB. The last piece, the final thread. The sun caught it, and for a brief moment the metal flared gold, like a spark on the surface of the lake. "This," I said quietly, "contains your words, your transfers, your laughter." Sabrina took a half step back. Her voice cracked. "You wouldn't—" "Justice doesn't argue," I said. "It plays evidence." The wind rose then, moving across the water, scattering the reflection of the villa's lights into trembling streaks. Andrew's eyes followed the USB as I placed it in his hand. No speeches, no accusations, just proof. Sabrina looked between us, her face drained of color. The sound of the water lapped softly against the dock, the only applause this moment would get. For a long time, no one spoke. Then I turned away, my steps slow, unhurried. The evening light painted the path ahead in muted gold. The air around the lake felt different that morning, lighter, as if the water itself had exhaled. Mist drifted just above the surface, thin as breath, dissolving with the first touch of sun. I heard the footsteps before I saw him. Andrew moved slowly down the path, hands in his pockets, head lowered, the kind of walk a man takes when he's run out of excuses. He stopped beside me, staring at the water. The silence between us was heavy, but not hostile. It just waited. "I thought you were fading, Mom," he said finally. His voice cracked the way paper tears. "I thought you were losing track of things. She told me you were forgetting details, misplacing papers." He swallowed hard. I believed her. I nodded once, watching the sunlight scatter across the water. "I was," I said quietly, "until you reminded me who I am." He turned, confused for a moment, then understood. His eyes filled with something close to regret, or maybe recognition. "I sent everything to Diana," he whispered, "all the files, before I came here." I met his gaze. "You did the right thing." For the first time in years, he looked younger, not by age, but by weight lifted. The guilt that had clouded him seemed to thin out with the rising light. He sat beside me on the wooden bench. Neither of us spoke for a while. The lake lapped gently against the dock, as if it too approved of silence. "Forgiveness isn't forgetting," I said softly. "It's sorting files properly." He gave a short, broken laugh, the sound of someone realizing peace was possible again. The breeze shifted, carrying the scent of cypress and damp earth. Birds circled high above, calling to each other across the open air. We sat there until the mist burned away completely, until the reflections on the lake stopped trembling. For the first time, the stillness felt real. I didn't reach for his hand. I didn't need to. Some reconciliations don't need touch, only understanding. Silence has a way of sending invitations. It travels through files, through networks, through the soft hands of people who believe in order. That afternoon, the stillness of the villa was broken only by the faint hum of a car approaching the driveway. The lake outside shimmered faintly, silvered under the sun. Through the glass, I saw the reflection of flashing lights, blue, red, blue again, strobing gently across the walls like a pulse. Sabrina was in the living room, scrolling on her phone, her smile brittle, her voice sharp. She froze when the knock came. 2 officers stood at the door, crisp uniforms, calm eyes. One spoke, measured and polite. "Mrs. Sabrina Langford, we have a few questions regarding financial discrepancies in your account." She blinked, the words catching in her throat. "There must be a mistake," she said quickly. My husband handles—" Andrew didn't move. He stood behind her, pale, silent, his eyes fixed somewhere far beyond the moment. I remained at the dining table, hands folded around my cup of tea. Steam rose softly, curling upward like a signature in the air. Through the window, the lake reflected everything: the uniforms, the hesitation, the inevitability. No shouting, no drama, only the quiet click of consequence arriving on schedule. The officer nodded politely. "Please gather your identification, ma'am." Sabrina hesitated, then turned slowly, her face drained of color. She looked at me, one last time, as if waiting for anger or triumph. I gave her neither, only composure. No gavel, no courtroom, I thought, watching the reflection of the lights flicker across the water. Just consequence arriving politely. The door closed. The sound of the engine faded down the long gravel road. I sat still for a long while, watching the ripples fade back into calm. Justice didn't need applause, only acknowledgement. Outside, the lake smoothed itself again, quiet, endless, reflecting only light.